Hello there, it's me, StrawHatLucas, Captain of the Eternal Dawn, and welcome back to another episode of Rambling Addiction, the series where I talk and you listen. Tonight, myself and historian of the Eternal Dawn, Kube the Red Sea, are going to be discussing the man, the myth, the legend, the god himself, Usopp, and all he does for the Straw Hat crew. But before we get into that, Kube, take us off.
Cue that theme song.
Rambling addiction, yeah, you're hanging out with Lucas. Manga, animator, anything, alright, let's do this. Weekly is the basis, worst generation. Cooking up a feast while he's turning through the pages. Theories that he's making, from shonen to seinen. Locked in, analyzing, using observation. Yeah, observation. Rambling addiction.
So, unlike with the Zoro video where we just had a broad discussion, we actually have pinpointed a lot of Usopp's most memorable moments and things that we wanted to talk about the most this episode so that the discussion is a little bit more structured than last time. This is a newer series I'm doing within the series of Rambling Addiction with the members of the Eternal Dawn. So these first few episodes, of course, we're going to be learning on the fly kind of how we want to do these discussions on the greatest crew in all of fiction. But as I said, I'm joined tonight by historian of the Eternal Dawn, Kube the Red Sea. Kube, how are we doing tonight?
I am so happy. As you know, Usopp is one of my three favorite Straw Hats. So to be able to spit on the goat himself for over 20 years, oh man, I'm so excited.
I am too, man. I was surprised when I asked the crew, which Straw Hats they wanted. You immediately were like, Usopp. I was expecting Nami. It works.
It's because people don't know this, and I mean, my three favorite Straw Hats, I mean, you've heard me when I say my three favorite Straw Hats, you won't be shocked. It's Usopp, Nami, and Chopper, just story-wise. Like, you know me, like, all the arcs that I talk constantly about is their arcs all the time.
Yeah,
like,
Drama Island, Water 7, Annie's Lobby for Usopp, but...
Yeah. I'm one of the few people in the community that don't call them the Cow Trio, but the Charismatic Trio.
Yeah,
that's all I'll say.
Yeah, they are very, very charismatic. So let's start out at Usopp's humble beginnings. Being, a villager at Syrup Village, his introduction to the crew, which I think is very important. It tells a lot about Usopp's character as a whole, because when we first see him, right, he's sitting there, he's lying, I've got 10,000 men, he's got the flags and stuff. And it's a sign of his ingenuity. I think Usopp's introduction is one of the best introductions of any of the Straw Hats because of the way that Oda sets it up. The 10,000 men, like I just said, he's got the contraption with all the flags like hanging from the trees and waving them and stuff like that so that people think that there's 10,000 men. And Luffy's like, oh my god, is there 10,000 men here? So what did you have to say on the introduction of Usopp?
For me, I love Usopp's introduction, and because not just as a One Piece fan and also as a theorist, if you look into Syrup Village and the arc that Usopp was introduced in, it's just such a great arc, Syrup Village. There's so much theme points on it, and I think like Usopp is, I've said this in the past, when we're gonna get more about the Nika type people, Usopp was the only person that was introduced like a Joy Boy type of character where even though everyone hated him, if he can make the people around him happy, that's all he needed. And I always felt like this was very compelling for me because we had Zoro before that, Then we had Nami, who obviously she's not the same level as Zoro and Luffy, but she was a strong female character and she was acting very tough. And Usopp was just walking with his insecurity on his, not even on his sleeve, on his forehead.
Yeah, on his nose, one might say.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and I think like the whole Pinocchio theme to it. Captain Usopp, his tales. Obviously you knew that his tales were big lies, but then when you realize that both Kaya and him knows that he's lying, she knows that he's lying, but it makes her happy, and he says, "Oh, I know that but if that can make her smile, I don't care."
Because when he's first introduced, I think the chapter and the episode that he's introduced in is called Usopp the Liar or something like that. But then you see the reasons why he's lying with Kaya and everything, and it brings a whole level of nuance to his character. It's almost like he's a necessary liar, right? Like every bit of lying he does is out of necessity up to this point. Obviously, the whole I can't go on this island disease is not a necessity, but you know what I'm saying. Like he tells her about the giant goldfish, and I think Actually, we'll get there. I was about to mention Little Garden, but we'll get there. Yeah, I think Usopp, like I've said it before, man, Syrup Village especially, it's one of my favorite arcs. When I did my Rambling Addiction on the arc rankings, I gave it a pretty high place, and even Grand Line Review commented on there. It was like, it's rare to see such praise for Syrup Village. I think the reason it's always stuck out to me is Usopp himself. He's my third favorite Straw Hat as well. You know, he's in my top 3. And it's that moment of him standing up on the hill with the Black Cat pirates pouring in from the ocean, and everyone else has gone to the other hill, the wrong hill, because Zoro led the way. Bad mistake. Never let Zoro lead the way. And Usopp stands there, proud, just waiting. Like, even though he's trembling, he's scared. He doesn't want to run because he doesn't want the village to find out that there are actually pirates there.
And I'll say this, I do feel like this is one of my biggest agenda, because, you know, as I'm one of those believer, I don't think that Usopp's flashback was actually being told there. Because Mary did not, he revealed he did not know Usopp, and he just explained what he heard about Usopp, his upbringing. Yeah. And so I find, like, I'll say this, you know, because we're in Zero Village. A lot of the themes that we see in Zero Village is very similar to Wano, which, if you think about it, what did Oden and Toki told Momo and Hiyori? The pirates are coming in 20 years. So yeah. I'm wondering if there is more of, you know how he was telling lies to Kaya to make her feel happy? I'm wondering if whenever time he was lying to his mom, he was referring to something that Usopp told his mom when he left, the reason why he left, which then Usopp does, seeing her mom, hoping to see that, so lying to her so she can, you know, she could be at peace, you know, unless she could stop stressing. Like I've said this, I honestly believe that there's more about Zero Village, you know.
Yeah, I do too.
It's like,
and we've spit on his flashback before, and I'd love to touch on this right now, actually. Is there may be more to it, more of a tragedy. Maybe there was a stepfather figure in the, picture or something like that who treated Usopp poorly, and that's another reason why he lies. But I love the idea that maybe the lies he's telling his mom isn't lies Usopp told him, but maybe things that he heard Usopp saying to his mother at some point in time,
Exactly.
It'd be beautiful if that came full circle like that. But go ahead, yeah.
No, and yeah, you're right. So with what you're alluding to about there's more about Usopp's backstory. For me, there's definitely something more about Usopp's backstory, because, like I said, there's a lot of themes. Like, if you can't even do it, like the villain in question was looking at the half moon under the sun, who uses blades as weapons, and his name is Captain Kuro. And in Wano, they were facing the force of Kurozumi. And then you have the half moon that represent the Kozuki, So it's like, for me, like, there's definitely something that, and if you think about it, there's very few arcs where I'm gonna bring another character in, Zoro, where he talks about honor. I think there's like 3 or 4 arcs where he makes comment on honor. The first time he did it was in Zero Village. He'd rather be stabbed than being held by Usopp. There's that badass scene where he just jumps in front of a projectile to get hit because he doesn't want an easy way in. And you think about it, that's big. That's one of Kaido's biggest regret with Oden, because someone interfered.
Oh, like, right.
There's like Oda's a goat when it comes to those foreshadowing, but I feel like there's something special about Zero Village.
I do as well. And not just as a whole, like, because obviously I am a fan of the arc, as I've already stated. Usopp is one of 4 Straw Hats, and you and I have talked about this extensively, not to get off topic too much, but it is Rambling Addiction. But there's about 4 Straw Hats whose backstories just don't add up to me. It's Nami, Frankie, Brook, and Usopp. We have not seen, I think, those 4 Straw Hats' greater backstory, because we know that Usopp left Usopp when he was young, but what happened in that time between Usopp leaving and Usopp's mother getting so sick that she began to pass? Because if she was already sick before Usopp left, I didn't think that would be the case. I could never see, just from what we know about Usopp, I'm not going to defend him as a father, but if he truly loved Usopp's mom, and the love that we've seen in the series of One Piece so far is undying love. Look at Rouge. She carried Roger's child for months and months and months past the appropriate term, knowing she would probably pass from that. But it didn't matter, because she wanted to make sure her lover's son was born into the world. It's same with Senior Pink in Russia. Yes, their relationship was tainted because of Senior Pink's actions, but he would go to these extreme lengths.
Exactly.
Yeah, just to make her smile. So if she was sick before, I just can't see a reality where she was sick before Usopp left. I think we're going to learn when Usopp meets Usopp that the reason his mother got sick was this almost broken heart syndrome kind of scenario, where Usopp leaving, even though she still had her son, made her so sick at heart that she passed away, being away from her lover. A love sickness, if you will.
I would even go more further than that. What if I told you that we got deeper into love sickness in Straw Village, but not with Usopp's mother, but with Kaya?
Oh!
Think about it. She lost her parents, and the only person she loved the most was Kuro. That was not an actual love because he did not love her. He was using her. And what did they say? That Usopp's stories towards this is what healed her.
Yeah.
What if it wasn't the stories that healed her? It's her starting to love Usopp. I feel like the love sickness could be a love that's not returned.
Yeah, that's
it's
actually
a bit like depression. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite additions to the live action. Actually, is them confirming the love that Kaya has for Usopp, because it's something we see in the story to this day. You know, when we get those Decks of the World, cover stories, it's always Kaya who's seeing Usopp's bounty poster and smiling real big as she's studying to be a doctor. And I believe there was even a recent panel of her when Luffy was announced as an emperor, also looking at one of Usopp's. Like, whenever there's a bounty reveal, if someone's reacting to Usopp's bounty, it's Kaya. And obviously his little apple dumpling gang, the Usopp pirates.
Yeah, the OGs. Yeah,
the OGs.
And for me, I do feel I would like, and this is a point that Smokey brought it up, but and we're going to talk about it more, but the fact that Usopp can take so much hit. So I do believe that there was someone in Usopp's life, because there's something that doesn't add up, and I said this. Usopp lost his mom at 8 years old. If you look at every Straw Hat, they explain how they survived when they're young kids. Robin having the harshest way, but Usopp, he just loses his mom around 8 years old. Then there's nothing else. Like, who did he live with for all those years? Why did people hate him so much just for lies? And it makes me think of, do you really think someone who runs around and lies all the time, they would go to the point of hating him? So I think and Smokey said that, it feels like someone, and then he's always lying, like someone destroyed his will, you know? What if he had someone in his life who bullied him to the point of, and thinking of his father that he heard great stories about, that he wished to be just like him, you know? And it's very similar to Sanji, if you think about it. The level that he puts Zeph, then he found out why he put Zeph such on a pedestal, because he had a horrible father. So he had an example. He had an example of what is a horrible father. So for him, Zeph was perfection, not because he was a perfect guy, but because he was caring towards him, you know?
I love this train of thought as well. Because the only father figure we really see for Usopp, if any, is that one guy. I think he's the mayor of Syrup Village, but the guy with the broom who always comes out of his house and is like, "Shut up! Stop yelling!" Like, you know what I mean? Like that one guy. Because I think he's the one who tells Zoro, Luffy, and Nami, and like, nah, that kid lives by himself. All he does is lie. You know what I mean? And it makes me wonder if there isn't something more between him and that man. Not that I would want Usopp to be, you know, a beaten child, but that is a valid question. Is we do not know how Usopp took care of himself whatsoever after his mother's passing. All we know from what we've been presented is that he more than likely lived by himself. So if that's the case, how did he get food? The live action gave us the whole bit about him cleaning ships on the dock. So there's an answer for it there, but that's not the source material. That's not the manga or the anime. There's no scene in either that shows us how Usopp could have lived. Because all we see from him is every single day he's jumping up there, shouting at the top of the lungs that the pirates are coming, and running down the town and getting chased out of town. Like, maybe he eats the food they throw at him? I'm not sure.
And I would even more to it is the live action changed it, but I believe the manga version, in which he talks about when Kaya talks about her parents dying 3 years ago, and then when Django told Kuro about it, he said, it was just happenstance. I have nothing to do with this. And obviously, people say, he must be lying. But my question is this: why would he lie to Django, who he knows every detail? It's just like he was his right-hand man. He was acting as a captain while he was, undercover, in a place where no one could hear them. That the moment that they heard them, is they tried to get rid of them. And when Usopp ran away, Kuro said no one would believe him. So why would he lie to Django? Is there someone? Actually, I have a candidate. I think you've heard me spit on it, and I'll go quickly because we're not talking about that storyline regardless, and later on. So there's only one person who's from the East Blue who can act like a bully because he actually disrespects his captain's dreams constantly, and fights just like Usopp, and has a visor just like Usopp. And if you look at his attire, it's quite similar to the British style that Kuro and Mary had. And I'm going to be
say Van Augur?
Because he never met the Blackbeard pirates in Jaya. Yet in Fishman Island, when Chopper talked about the Blackbeard pirates, and I tell people who are hearing me, go look at his reaction. It's very weird for someone who's never met the Blackbeard pirates to be that traumatized or like that triggered by it, where he yelled at Chopper, "They would never come to us." And Van Augur, since he's been introduced, he keeps attacking on Blackbeard's ambition.
You're right.
And he's from the East Blue, So like I said, like we know we're seeing it now in the story. Pudding being taken by Blackbeard. Sanji's most likely going to react to it. Blackbeard is already like he's just stacking the things for Luffy to hate him on. Garp, Ace, like he's just stacking it. He's just going more and more. So yeah.
And if I may, with the whole Van Augur angle as well, most people are lining up Van Augur and Usopp to battle in the end game just because they are both the marksmen of their crew. Oda gave us just that little more, that like maybe Van Augur is from Syrup Village, and when like he could even be Usopp's mother's brother, like Usopp's uncle or something like that. Which I'm not saying he is. They look nothing alike, and Oda is very good at drawing family members looking similar. But it could be like that. Or, well, let's say not Usopp doesn't have a long nose. Maybe he's Usopp's brother. No, I'm getting ahead of myself. Either way, it could be, something like that, where he's the one who had to take Usopp in and he didn't like it. Because we do know that Usopp was a marksman, but is he the one that taught Usopp? If Usopp's mother passed away at 8 years old, when would Usopp taught him how to shoot? You know what I mean? And from what Usopp says, he barely remembers his father because of how early he left in his life.
Exactly.
So who taught Usopp how to shoot? Is it Van Augur? Did we just crack this on Rambling Addiction? Maybe.
Think about it. This also would explain why Usopp, for some reason, uses anything but a rifle. If you look at it, the way he uses slingshot, he doesn't use it like a gun, like a rifle. He makes Kabuto look like a rifle, yet he never uses a rifle. And then the only thing we know about Usopp is he was supersonic fast, because I think that's a comment of Oda and SBS. That with his marksmanship plus his supersonic speed, he can, that's how Usopp got by. Well, fun fact, do you know what Van Augur's nickname is? Supersonic.
Supersonic, yeah. Okay, so we have cooked on Van Augur, we have cooked on Usopp, which that Van Augur stuff, that is spicy, y'all. That is super duper spicy. That's the only kind of spice you can get when you have Cube of the Red Sea on a video. But let's move forward to the next bullet point that we wanted to discuss, and that is Logtown, and more specifically, what I believe is secondary canon filler episodes of Logtown, because Oda did not have the space in the manga to put every single thing he wanted into. I gotta ask, what is it specifically from these filler episodes you're wanting to talk about, Cube? Because I think I know, but...
Yeah, for me, it's the whole Daddy Masterson. That I think I know recently, for people who heard our stream of a recent chapter where we meme on the daddy in question, that's what I was talking Elbaf, could be, Daddy Master himself. Think about it. That's why I think this filler episode will be very important right now, because if you look at that filler episode, it's all Western themed.
Yeah.
And we're getting into a Western-like theme as well in Elbaf. So I do feel like we've always debated on, like, we know that Oda loved those fillers, he wanted it in the story, but how much can we trust those fillers? And I do feel like as we go to Elbaf, especially, with the whole storyline, where, the only reason why Usopp left the duel was because he realized that he had a daughter that was still in his life.
Yeah.
And he told
Exactly.
him, he said, be there for your daughter. Which is quite interesting, obviously deadbeat father allegations are beating Usopp a lot. Dragon, with the recent arcs, he's leaving those allegations because we see their actual reasoning. But it does give an idea that, there's more to it. And I feel like Lockdown, while everyone had their specific thing, I feel like Lockdown was the best example, was kind of following into his father's footstep. It's the first step to him following without him knowing.
Yeah, one thing that I always found interesting in the Lockdown stuff is it showed Usopp's ability as a sniper in a way that we had not seen before. We'd gotten some really cool moments on Arlong Park with him, and I believe the scene of them finding Johnny and what is it? Yeah, I haven't said his name in forever. Johnny and Yasuke. Is that it?
Yeah. Yosaku.
Yasaku. Yes, thank you. I'm leaving that in. Judge me, audience. I don't even mind. He fires the cannons and dead hits the island. That was like the first, oh yeah, I see it now. Like Usopp's sniper abilities. We saw him on Syrup Village. He's bringing those to the crew and he's getting better. He's the one that can fire the cannons. But this episode, especially knowing what we know now, I feel like is the first time we see Usopp really use his observation haki, and it kind of fits the bill for everything you need to have a haki awakening. Most of the times we've seen the haki awakenings, it's emotional moments. You're defending something, it's either life or death or an intense situation, which this was not that. But at the same time, this man was disrespecting Usopp's father. And when it comes down to it, even though Usopp is a deadbeat dad, and like you said, he's never beating those allegations until something happens in the story that proves otherwise, he is still Usopp's father, and Usopp loves him. When Luffy said that he knew Usopp, Usopp got excited. He's like, you've met my dad?
And also, if you think about it, don't you people, and for people who are hearing it right now, don't you feel like sometimes if you look at some arcs, there's like a mirror parallel between what Luffy is going through and what Usopp is going through?
Oh yeah.
And you think about it, his challenge basically reconnected to his father. And you think about the only other person that Daddy Masterson talked in that filler episode was Smoker, right?
Mm-hmm.
The White Chase. And Usopp is called the Chaser. Luffy was saved by his father, by Smoker. So I do feel like you could start seeing that Oda's been working on this duo between Usopp and Luffy.
Yeah.
This is sort of duality.
Yeah, and it's I think that's another reason that Oda plays so heavily into that friendship aspect of Luffy and Zoro. And we'll touch on this way later when we get to the Water 7 Enies lobby points. But, the reason the fight between Usopp and Luffy hits so hard is because of that friendship. And they're both very much thematically similar characters. They don't know their fathers. They didn't have the best of upbringings. Luffy's was better because he found Ace and Sabo, and Usopp eventually did find his Usopp pirate gang, but they're both very much kindred spirits who...
Yep.
And I think that's why they're as close as they are.
If you think about it, they're the only two that we're sure 100% are from the East Blue. Zoro, we know that part of his family originally came from Wano. And since we know things have been changing in this cycle or this era, so there might have been a reason why they came there. So another prophecy maybe that Sanji, he's from the North Blue, and I've always said that Nami is definitely not from the East Blue. The way it sounds more like she was being moved there or she was found there, but it does feel like there's more to the story.
Yeah, because we don't know where Oikot. We don't know where Oikot was, do we?
We
for
know
sure.
It's in the East Blue. We know it's in the East Blue, but I tell people, look at the reading. All it says is that after the Battle of Oikot Kingdom, Nami and Nojiko were found there. They use the word found, officially.
Yeah.
And if you look at the stuff, when you go data book, the only two Straw Hats who are said to have been born and bred in East Blue is Luffy and Usopp.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oda is very good with his words. Yeah.
Yeah, he really is a big fan of wordplay. I would like to move on now, if you're cool with it, to Little Garden, which I think is one of the biggest arcs for Usopp.
Yeah, for me, it's such a big arc, and it's not even about the start of him loving Elbaf.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the first arc where it's very clear that Oda is doing that duality with Luffy and him. Both of them hear two different sides of a story. Learning about a warrior race and wanted to be just like them. So start, really, cementing his dream, going further in his dream. And those people, for some reason, hearing his stories, they see him as valuable as any warrior they ever faced.
Yeah, they're the first people in the story to see Usopp as a brave warrior. I've always said this. I think it's because they recognized his fear. One thing that a lot of historians and like historical figures who took precedence in these large-scale battles and stuff have said is the best warriors know fear. You know what I mean? Because if you're arrogant and you're going into battle too overconfident, that's when you get ahead of yourself and you lose. To be fearful is to be observant. Key word there, of the battlefield, which definitely ties into Usopp. And I think that the Giants really saw that in him. And I was going to bring this up in Syrup Village, but I did not. This is one of the first arcs where we see Usopp's lies starting to become true.
You have that, and also we're in the arc, and I've been talking about it for years. Since you've known me, I've been talking about that.
Yeah.
Especially with a certain goat being reintroduced in recent chapters. Louis Arnott with his stuff, where we get Little Garden. For people who don't know that, Little Garden was introduced as from Louis Arnott's Oda box, the land of the Giants, the original land of the Giants, which is quite interesting. We all know that Usopp's story really got interesting later on in his adventure, learning about Nolan, and find out Nolan's books later on by Oda saying that it's in the Bragman books.
Yeah.
So you're seeing also like the fairy tale lore that he's connecting to is starting in this arc as well.
Well, not only that, and I'm sure we'll touch on it later, but like just his ties to Nolan. Yeah, you know what? We got to save this for later because if not, we'll go too hard on it right now.
We've got Jaya still.
Exactly, we still got Jaya, but no, I think Little Garden. It's the start of Usopp believing that he can actually achieve the dream that he said when they put their foot on the barrels. It's him seeing, man, if these people, these gigantic warriors who have fought each other every single day for a century, believe that I can be a brave warrior of the sea, then maybe I can be a brave warrior of the sea. And it's such a beautiful moment for Usopp to find those heroes he'd been looking for. Because to go back on what we've been saying about Usopp being a deadbeat father, he didn't have that hero in his own father. So to see him almost in real time get these surrogate fathers like we saw Zeph have and Zoro have kind of in his dojo master, and Frankie having Tom later in the story, and obviously Robin and Saul, 1133 was peak. We're not going to talk about it. But yeah, like to see Usopp get his almost surrogate fathers in real time in the story, it's such a wonderful thing. I'm so happy with Usopp being on Elbaf and being with Dory and Brogy again.
And this is another point we're talking in Syrup Village, where we see in Little Garden, which proves that his flashback, like all Straw Hats, have three things: a horrible flashback story that makes him want to give up, a dream that they haunt into it, but some sort of legend, some sort of person that installs that or tells them something that they keep it. Usopp only got that at age of 17 years old, which proves again in Little Gardens that he never had that in Syrup Village. So like there's more to it. This is also, I'll say this because everyone talks about Sanji, Luffy, and Zoro and Nami copying their abilities, learning new abilities from people they face.
Yes.
I tell people, look at what Usopp does in later on in the arc, especially of all those explosive. It only happens when after that showdown with Mr. 5. And if you remember before that, he would always use some sort of, some sort of like fuel to burn things up. But he met Mr. 5 who could instantly, and then you see him in Alabasta, in his lobby, and all of those moments where he's just doing all in one.
Yeah, I love that. Too, because his big fight in the East Blue Saga, right, is with Chu, who he defeats with an exploding star. So he knew the potential of explosions, but then once he fights Mr. 5, he sees just how devastating a full barrage of explosions can be on an enemy. So yeah, I've never picked up on that actually. That's a very interesting point.
Every Straw Hat do it actually. If you actually go deep on it in some of their fights, Just Zoro, Luffy, and Sanji are the most obvious one. But they all do it.
Speaking of Usopp's fight, I think this is a good way to go into our next point, which is his fight against Miss Merry Christmas and Mr. Four in Alabasta. This is one of my favorite fights in the entire story, actually. We had talked about doing a stream on the Eternal Dawn about favorite One Piece fights, and this was going to be in my top 3 for sure. Not only is this fight epic just because of it really comes down to the thematic elements in the fight, right? Because obviously, yes, the action is amazing, and I'm sure you have your points that you want to spit on it as well. But for me, it's him teaching Chopper, there's times when you can back down from a fight, but when someone is laughing at your captain's ambitions, your friend's dream, that is the time you can never, ever step down from a fight. And he keeps getting back up, and Chopper can see it because this is Chopper's honeymoon arc. A lot of people forget that, but I know you wouldn't, but this is Chopper's first arc with the Straw Hats, going to Alabasta, and then he gets into this huge fight with one of, let's be real, the weakest members of the crew, someone who sees himself as the weakest member of the crew. And what does he see? He sees this, the man who is supposedly, the weakest of the Straw Hats, standing on all business and being a brave warrior, not letting Miss Merry Christmas and Mr. Four disrespect his captain and his best friend whatsoever. And the moment he stands up and is like, Straw Hat Luffy is the man who will be the king of the pirates, and he's the first Straw Hat. Well, Zoro makes his promise to Luffy and calls him king of the pirates, but that's more of a is that okay with you, king of the pirates? Acknowledging his dream. Usopp's technically the first Straw Hat to tell an enemy Luffy is the man that will be the king of the pirates. And it's just such a powerful moment, my man.
So you have the I Won't Run, which is very similar to a parallel. There are a lot of parallel scenes with Dressrosa, with Usopp, if you think about it. But there's another moment where Usopp was the first one to see the bomb.
Yeah.
And the first thing he did is he sent a flare to call up the troop, which I think is so important because you realize later on that if Usopp did not do that, they wouldn't have been able to, in time, with Pell and everything.
Yeah.
That's, so yeah, definitely. Teaching, like you said, teaching Chopper, which again proves that there's more darkness to Usopp, the fact that he kept getting back up and he barely complained about the pain. He complained about their strength, but not about him how much it hurts him. More how can we defeat that? Which is,
how to overcome this, not what's happening to me. The reason I bring up that Chopper thing is because Chopper even says to Zoro, I'm starting to think I got on the wrong ship at first when they're walking through the desert in Alabasta, and Zoro gives them that big speech about sometimes I think that too, we all do our own thing, but in the end there's something about Luffy that's infectious. And this is Chopper seeing that in real time through Usopp. Usopp doing all of that is just proving to Chopper, I did get on the right ship. This is the right crew that I want to back.
For me, is it's something that's quite interesting in Alabasta. Like I said, there's not much of Usopp in Alabasta, but you can see that there's a lot of. I do believe that Alabasta is the breadcrumb that he needed to cement those ideas on Usopp for his in Dressrosa, which we'll talk later on.
Yeah,
because if you look at it, it's just Dressrosa is the same thing, but it's just it's on steroids.
On a whole different level,
Yeah. So I Won't Run scene was just that moment where he just says I won't run. In Alabasta.
Chef's kiss. It's so good, man. So good.
There's something about Goldberg and Gerd, and right now in this arc that we're in, they do look quite similar to Miss Merry Christmas and Mr. Four if you look at their drip.
Yeah. What if they're the ones, because I keep saying that, Nami and Usopp are going to do the Hikaku sovereignty. What if they're the ones that teach him how to do it?
Yeah. I've been saying it. I think that Gerd is being written in a certain way in the story, even though I would rather Story and Broggy to be there to challenge Usopp more than them training him, which would be more fitting. And I do feel like would it make sense that a reversal in some would that happen in Alabasta where the first major, and it's also if you think about it, all the other fight that Usopp went through, he had difficulty, but he was able to overcome it. This was the first major fight where it was a real wall. Yeah. So I could see it, especially them being the two of them. Yeah, I can definitely see it. But yeah,
I like that. I've not thought of that at all, but I enjoy that. So this brings us to what I had just almost mentioned a little while ago, next in our notes that Kube so lovingly provided, is Jaya and his ties to Nolan. And I'm gonna let you spit a little bit on this, Kube. I'm not gonna lie. I think you got some spicy stuff to say.
so yeah, for me, Jaya is quite interesting because this is where we get into the. It's not even before Nika was Skypiea. It's where we start realizing that there are stories being told, and told as fables. And when we get introduction to, and at the time I think no one caught on to it, but if you think about it, they were just literally saying, those are people like Usopp, stories that no one believes in. And you can understand why Usopp connected so much, because Cricket said that they slandered him. And then you think of Usopp, that's Usopp's life. Being called a liar, no one take him seriously. So you can see that Usopp directly connected. And people say everyone was, at least Luffy was hyped about an island in the sky. Usopp was focused on clearing Nolan's name. If you think about it, because in Skypiea he didn't have he had a good story, but it wasn't like, oh, I need to see this. It's not like right now with Elbaf. So you kind of see the core of Usopp, where Usopp doesn't care about the riches, the islands. He cares about the people. Going back to Sir Village as well,
Yeah,
As long as people are. Yeah.
I really like what you said about him trying to clear Nolan's name, because as I'd said already, I believe the episode's called Usopp the boy who cried pirates, or Usopp the liar, or something like that, his introductory chapter or episode. I may be wrong on that, but if I'm not, the implications there are spicy as hell. So I was mistaken. It's an episode in Dressrosa and chapter in Dressrosa. It's Liar Usoland. But nonetheless, the parallels between him and Nolan being called liars when they're spitting the truth, and we'd already talked about in Little Garden, Usopp's lies do have a tendency to come true. I think that the parallel between him and Nolan also seen with what you had said as well. Nolan didn't care about the history of Jaya. He didn't care about the culture of Jaya. What he cared about more than anything was helping the people of Jaya, helping the Shandians. And it's such an admirable trait. Now, let me ask you though, do you think Usopp carries some of Nolan's will?
I do believe so. I do believe that there's some, and that's Will of Dreams, who's been spin on this, on the whole, and Nak React as well. They've been spin on the last couple of months about the concept of reincarnation with Will, where basically everything is repeated in One Piece, like every 100 years or every 200 years, and the actual people come back. Just what Atlas said in Egghead.
Yeah.
I don't really die. I come back and I will look differently the next time. What if they say, what if that actually exists? And that's all about inherited wills. So basically, there's select few who the Gorosei who don't die, but basically there's no overpopulation.
Yeah,
the population
it's just
will always
recycled souls almost.
Yeah. And you think about that, they would make sense of what if the way you go, and that would explain how people like Kaido and Kuma or Big Mom are born different. What if the way you go dictates the way you come back?
Yeah.
You die strong. What was the last thing that Nolan did? He started accepting crime and taking it in. A liar. Smile. And then the next time you see him, you have Usopp who accept that he's a liar.
He's a liar from birth.
So I would see something like that. So at least from the same family, and he did make that lie in Dressrosa, or at least some connection. I'm sure he inherited as well.
Yeah, I was thinking too with this whole, we'll talk about this after recording, but I gotta say it in the video. There's a belief system on Earth, in our actual reality, where there's a mechanism on the moon that recycles souls and sends them back down to Earth. It's the soul farmer theory or whatever. And that's why we never see the dark side of the moon, and that's what's hidden on the moon and whatnot. And that's what causes reincarnation. What if that's what we were seeing with Enel? That's what the automata are doing on the moon, is sending the souls back to be reincarnated. And what's breaking the cycle is they couldn't filter out the souls that Emu didn't want reincarnated, such as Nolan, such as Joy Boy, such as, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna trail off on it, but I just think that's an interesting concept. So I definitely got to have a conversation with Will of Fire, Will of Dreams. knack. You know, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I would say, and also another thing that pushes that how much it connects. We all know that Usopp has the Pinocchio theme, right?
Yeah.
And people foreshadowing that at least at the end of the one of the, if there's more than one narrator, one of them is Usopp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to know who is the narrator in the Pinocchio stories, or at least the Disney version of it? That Oda has said that he loved Disney movies and he has inspired on some of the design some characters like
Jiminy
Usopp.
Cricket. I see where you're going.
And who is the person who told about Usopp about the story of Nolan?
Montblanc Cricket.
Blanc
Yes, sir.
Cricket. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's spicy, man. That's good.
Yeah, people don't catch on that. And in a way, you could say that the stuff that he learned from Cricket and learning from him is almost like Pinocchio with his conscience.
Yeah. Hashtag
Yeah,
in
so it's
before Usopp becomes a donkey.
But yeah, so for me, I think this is what I like. And like I said, it reconnects to Little Garden because we only found out later on that the Bragman books have the Nolan stories inside them.
Yeah.
So you can see, especially with Usopp's story, you can see there's a build up. Like Oda's also building on Sunset, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I would not say that, people have claimed that Kalgara might be, Luffy might have the will of Kalgara. He's one of them who has that Luffy inherited the will with, like that whole
I felt
cycle.
Joy Boy kind of thing.
Yeah, and if you think about it, what did Nolan promise Kalgara? They're gonna party when he comes back. When Luffy and Usopp go to Skypiea, we're not gonna talk about Skypiea, so I can talk about this, but the only two people who did the Nika dance was Luffy.
Were
and
Usopp and Luffy. Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Oh, that's good, dude. And because
Like
their
promised.
relationship, mirrors Kalgara and Nolan's.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a kind of a red herring. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but it's kind of a red herring too, because you would think that Cricket represents Nolan in that because he's hearing the bell ring. But it's not, because the adventure was them together. So it's Usopp and Luffy. Oh, and I like that.
You guys remember that scene in Little Garden where Luffy is stuck between two boulders and Usopp comes and they're having disagreement because they all believe the other giant story. Mm-hmm. And they get stuck in the drama. Remember the fight with Nolan and Kalgara when Kalgara gets Nolan stuck inside a boulder? It's a reversal.
Dude, I didn't even. Oh, Kube, you're blowing my mind. Rambling addiction and a cook session, I'm in.
Yeah. So it's like I said, Usopp is such an interesting character because I always said that Luffy might be Joy Boy, but the concept of Nika as a person, a sad character who just made everyone laugh, could be told from Usopp's point of view. Like Usopp isn't Nika, but it's like Mal. We're seeing a Mal and Nika shoot Usopp in a way, and then a different way. Like,
I like that. That's really, really spicy, Kube. I'm not gonna lie. So we have now cooked on Nolan and a lot of Usopp in the beginning halves of the story. We're getting closer to the time skip. I think it's time to spit on what I consider one of Usopp's biggest arcs in the entire story, definitely his biggest arc in the pre-time skip, and that is Water 7 and Enies Lobby.
Such a comfortable moment for Usopp in the community.
I think
people saw it forgiven him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't understand that at all because I understand completely. Usopp, I've always said this, and there's multiple creators have said this as well. Usopp represents us if we were in the story. This is what a base human could do in the world of One Piece. Now, he does have observation hockey, and a base human does not have that, but that's a different arc entirely, really. In Water 7, we see Usopp for how he really is. He gets jumped by the Frankie gang, and Nami finds him beaten, broken, and it's really a blow to Usopp. And then when he gets back to the ship, after, trying to get the money back and the Straw Hats having to go and wreck the Frankie house and stuff, and he doesn't see, we have to get rid of the Mary because she's damaged. He sees they're throwing her away because she was broken. I was just broken. When are they going to throw me away?
No, even go further than that. Think about this, right? Even though Usopp is a marksman, what did Usopp say that he especially with Chopper, he talks about like his main role with it is he always talks about he has to fix up the Mary.
Yeah.
It's if you think about it, the Mary being destroyed, not him able to fix it, is him attacking himself because they want to get rid of the Mary because I did a bad job.
Yeah.
So he's just living his insecurity. He wasn't able to do what he was able to do to Mary, especially with what happened in Skypiea with, seeing the Clobarman of the Mary.
Yeah, and not only that,
like, all
but
that
the mast being destroyed and how much damage that Mary had taken.
Yeah,
like
exactly. Feeling like he's the culprit behind that, and just as anyone who has an emotional response, he's having this whole moment where he's getting upset, and
Yeah, and he's taking it out on himself, and it's not the right move, and it leads to the fight with Luffy, which I briefly touched on earlier. It is one of the best written fights in all of fiction, not just manga and anime, but fiction as a total. And it showed just what Usopp was truly capable of when he had the appropriate amount of time to analyze his enemy. I mean, I never once expected Usopp, like when they said that they were going to fight, right? I never once expected Usopp to even land a blow on Luffy, but he does, and he keeps Luffy on the ropes for a minute. He hits him with the hot stuff star in the mouth, and then peppers the battlefield with in an instant with cantrips or cantips, whatever they're called. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then when Luffy finally gets close enough to hit him, impact dial. It's so well done. But yes, go ahead, Cube.
No, and there's that, he's showing his determination plus his tactical prowess, learning those kind of stuff. I feel like for me, that Water 7 moment was something that was so important. And the best example is, how people always say well, if Zoro was in Whole Cake, he would have attacked Sanji for what he did. People don't realize Zoro, during this whole time, he understood it. He knew it would need to be out. Sanji spoke out more against Luffy, saying they all let Usopp do his thing, just to lash out,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So
Oh, go ahead.
Big moment for this arc. No, it's a big moment for this arc because you're starting to see that. I've always said this. I feel like Usopp, for a very long time in the crew, they couldn't see us as the coward, but you could see that Usopp. We seen from Usopp's point of view. How we always say, "Oh, Usopp's a coward." Well, why didn't they say, Luffy, don't do that challenge? You are going to kill him. No, they respected it. If you think about it, I think they already was convinced that Usopp is that guy. He just hasn't seen it yet.
He hasn't seen it yet. Exactly, my man. And that's what's important too about this arc is Sanji even tells him, when he's dressed up as, I know it's blasphemous to go against the meme, but when he's dressed up as Soga King, liar! Sanji even tells him, we all have our things that Luffy cannot do. There's a reason you're here. There's things that you can do, I cannot do. And that's how the rest of the crew sees Usopp. But all Usopp sees that he was good for, especially in that moment, wasn't his marksman abilities, but his ability to patch the Mary, like you had said. So I think it's one of the biggest moments of character development throughout this entire arc. And then I actually want to lead into Enies Lobby with this a little bit. And it's when they return to Water 7 in the post Enies Lobby and he says he's sorry, it's that growing moment because he's realizing, the crew forgives him and they're glad that he was there for them at Enies Lobby, even though Luffy and Chopper don't know it was him. But he still needs to apologize for the way he treated their captain.
And if you take what's the one thing Usopp always does? He does the shooting and then he runs away, right?
Yes, sir.
He stood his ground when he got the order and burned the world government flag. He committed the crime. I mean, it's a crew thing, but Usopp was the one doing it.
Yeah, he's the one who committed the crime. And to even take that a step farther of him standing his ground, look at when Luffy was on the ground fighting Rob Lucci. Usopp didn't run away. He stood there and he screamed to Luffy, get up, what the hell are you doing? We aren't down yet. We haven't gotten Robin back. You have to get up, you have to fight. And no one else could have delivered that moment to Luffy when he needed it most than Usopp, than his best friend. It's hard because almost all of the Straw Hats are Luffy's best friend. He loves all of them so much. They are his nakama, his crewmates. But Usopp being the one to say this to him and not someone like Zoro, that's his role in the crew, is to tell Luffy the things he needs to hear in those moments as a captain. Stop messing around. We're not playing pirates. We are pirates. That kind of stuff. He needed most right then in that moment Usopp to be the one to tell him to get up, because Usopp and him had just had that big emotional, moment. And I think, just to kind of flip back to the burning of the flag, I think that was the moment that Usopp kind of saw just how important he was to the crew. No one else could have hit that flag from there. It was only an Usopp job. And it harkens back to what I was just saying about Sanji and talking to him. There are things Usopp can do that none of the other crew can do. So, Sniper King, shoot down that flag.
Shoot down that flag.
Roger.
Exactly. And you think about it, the thing you were talking about the Mary.
Yeah.
Another thing that shows the importance of the whole how they care about Usopp. Usopp, as if you heard about Elbaf, he's the crew understands his love for Elbaf. They give the Mary a Viking funeral.
Yeah.
Which is a theme that we've seen in Warland. So yeah, really you could see that around Water 7. That's why I always say I think we're seeing everything from the point of view of POV of the person in question in the Straw Hats.
Yeah, I think so as well.
So that's
makes
why
a
we see
lot of
Usopp as
sense.
a weakling, because that's how Usopp sees himself as.
And then this is the moment where he starts to kind of get into the, it's almost like he's growing up, right? Because Zoro says to Usopp, Luffy says something like, I'm glad Usopp's not here because I don't know if he could handle this. And Zoro says, is that true? And Usopp says, a man knows when it's time to say goodbye. And it shows his growth from the beginning of the arc and how he was feeling about the Mary and himself to now and how he feels about himself and the Mary.
And you know how Zoro doesn't likes to fight by himself?
Yeah.
What angered him wasn't that he was tagged. He knew it was Usopp, that he was tagged with Usopp. What angered him is that he was handcuffed to him, so he was limited in his movement.
Yeah.
So he couldn't fight
No
away.
storm.
Yeah. So you could actually see that Zoro does trust Usopp's skills.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, yeah.
I felt that in all of Eni's lobby, actually, is that there was this presence of Usopp realizing just how valuable he was to the crew.
Yeah, and the fact of how Sanji, the way he beat Jabra, and Jabra was doing the whole wolf, the boy who cries wolf, which is literally the
Usopp's thing.
storyline in service. Yeah, and how those lies just angered him and those kind of stuff. You could see how Usopp dealt with it, and you could see that Sanji does not look Usopp the same way.
Yeah.
So you can really see that what we see is Usopp, how he sees himself. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I like that though, because when you look at it in that angle that you're talking about, you also see how the rest of the crew sees Usopp as well, because he's seeing himself a certain way, but because we're seeing it through his eyes, kind of, if you're looking at it in that perspective, he's still not seeing just how much the crew needs him. Oh, that's really something special. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to Thriller Bark. Now, in the notes that you had gathered for this rambling addiction, you wrote Thriller Bark acceptance, and I'm curious, Kube, what do you mean by this?
Accepted of his shortcomings, to the point that he turned his shortcomings into a strength. When Perona was about to using her fruit, he realized, dude, I'm a pessimist person. I'm a depressed person by nature. And instead of telling sorry, he used that as a force. And it's how there's the 9 stages of denial?
Yeah.
What's the last stage? Acceptance.
Acceptance, yeah.
And I think throughout the story until then, Usopp was going through the 9 stage of denial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what it was all about. Yeah. And how literally the 2 people we saw who first fell was Luffy and Zoro.
Yeah. And then Usopp was the one that could stand their ground against him. And Frankie also was like, I wish I was a shellfish.
Yeah, exactly,
But nonetheless, yeah, Usopp was the one to stand proud with them. Oh, dude, that's crazy. I didn't even think about it like that. It's acceptance. He's accepting the fact that he's so pessimistic and beats himself up. I love too, I'm not gonna lie, it's just a funny moment where Perona realizes he's not affected by her negative emotions because of his own negativity towards himself, and she's like, you're doing a great job.
Yeah, like I said, there's not much with Usopp in I think in Thriller Bark, but I think that's one of the bows. And people always talk about the nothing happened moment with Zoro. People forget that with chapter before, when Kuma announced, Usopp at the same time as everyone else told Kuma to get lost when he said that he's coming to take Luffy. Just give us Luffy and we'll let you go.
And because, just to kind of move past Thriller Bark, but to continue on this Kuma train of thought, because we're getting close to the time skip now, is when Kuma shows up on Sabaody, Usopp is also the first one to stand up to him.
Yeah.
Yep. He pulls strong, and the amount of growth between the beginning of Water 7 and to the time skip is insane. It just, the amount of times Usopp stands up for himself or stands up for his crew, it's like he's coming into that role that I am part of this crew. They do need me. Even if I don't see myself as valuable, it's like you said in Thriller Bark, it's acceptance. He's accepting the fact that even if I can't see these things about myself, this is the case.
He's learning that there is strength in what he has. Basically he's not going through his lies and just adapting to I can do it, but then he can't do it. He's realizing, okay, this is what I have, and I'm going to use that to my advantage.
Exactly. So let's get into the time skip a little bit. Obviously, arcs leading up to the time skip, Usopp was not present. All we saw was him on the Bowen Archipelago. And our boss boy, Heracleson. Like, let's be real. Usopp it. But what I want to say most about this is actually mirroring what we had talked about in Jaya, is that, the evidence for Usopp being the one that's carrying on Nolan's will is completely evident with what he does in the time skip. He doesn't just learn how to be a better fighter, like, he gets jacked, and as we see in Return to Sabaody, he's got like muscles and everything. But he also learns a lot about one specific subject that directly ties him to Nolan, and it's botany. Almost every attack he's done in the post-time skip has been based around botany. So we've seen that he's not only taking on this marksman role now on the crew, but in some ways a botanist role as well.
Yeah, and if you think you go even more bigger, think about this. So Heracles is the example that Luffy doesn't want to follow. In the ways that the guy that lost every one of his crew, so he just has, his adventure to go on.
Yeah.
Like you think about during those 2 years, he saw this great person, but basically it was short to all of his adventures, not because he was not unable to, it's because he lost all of his friends.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to see Heracleson again in the story, I'm not gonna lie. That would be so cool. I love Heracleson.
Like I said, it's an interesting story. I definitely believe that a lot of people we saw in them, they talk about their older days. I think we're gonna get a flashback at one point where they're all gonna be there.
Yeah, I think
I can see him coming back.
I think we're gonna get some kind of flashback to some of the Straw Hats training moments, like Robin in the Revolution Army. But because we've started getting that, right? We got one already in Egghead with Nami. And with her being on Weatheria and the weather wizard showing her about the weather knots and how they trap wind inside of knots, and then, you know what I mean? Oh wait, was that wasn't a flashback? I think I just connected that to Egghead, but but no, yeah, I do think that we're going to get a bunch of flashbacks to the pre-time skip and see more, especially like. And I know I always have to bring up Frankie, but like since Vegapunk's on the crew, it would make sense that Frankie, we're all expecting them to have a conversation about what Frankie learned at Vegapunk's lab. It's the reason he was able to build himself the way he did for the time skip. So I would love to see either Heracleson come back in the story or Usopp going more in depth about how his botany abilities came to be. And a perfect place for that to happen is Elbaf, especially if he's training with Gerd and Goldberg and planning on fighting Dory and Brogy. They'll be like, well, if they want to fight you, what do you have in your arsenal that's going to take them out? And he can show them, I've got this flower that does this and this flower that does that. And it gives you a chance to build up what happened to him in the time skip.
I agree.
Yeah.
No, like I said, and then if you make a connection, I do believe that Perona's fighting against Perona was what helped him how to use the pop greens as well.
Yeah, I think so as well.
No. Yeah.
So that brings us to the biggest arc for Usopp in the entire story so far. And I know we're skipping Fishman Island and Punk Hazard, but Usopp had his moments there, yes, of course. One of the best moments in Fishman Island was him impersonating Robin.
Oh, I hope Nami hasn't been eaten by some deep sea creature.
But it's Dressrosa that really upped Usopp in a lot of people. I've had people who were certified Usopp slanderers, didn't care for the guy at all, get to Dressrosa and be like, okay, I get it now. I see it.
I mean, if you think about it, Luffy might have freed the kingdom of Dressrosa, but Usopp unshackled the people.
Exactly. Which brings us to a big part that we were saying earlier during the Nolan stuff, is that Usopp cares more about the people than the culture or, the events going on around him. It's more about what can I do to help these people. And of course, his role in the master plan to take down Doflamingo was a key role because he had to take out Sugar. And this is kind of what upsets me, is because Usopp almost runs away. And that's what causes Robin to get captured and turned into a toy. But the minute he forgets Robin, he's not doing it for a crewmate anymore. Now he's doing it for everyone around him. And it's what causes him to turn around and go back to Sugar.
If I'm not mistaken, I think then again, maybe you're remembering better than me, but I think it was more like he started to run away because at the same time Robin was forgotten. And because it's not comes from me, but Ferris said that right. It shows Oda's storytelling. The reason why Usopp ran away, and he said is, when is Usopp's biggest story moment is in Water 7 in his lobby. But how was it that possible? Because he also made him develop as him manning up and going after Robin, forgetting that part of his adventure. Basically,
he's forgetting that character development. Oh, yeah. Dude,
it's not me. It was a comment on the YouTube. I love to watch anime reaction, and someone made that in a comment saying that's how Oda is so good at. And it's true. Like, don't put me on it. Maybe it was because, but I'm pretty sure.
No, you're right.
Sugar just did it, and then that's when he started running away.
Yeah, because she was holding Sugar, and he was about to take the shot, and then he forgot Robin, and that's when he starts to try to run away.
And that part of him came back,
you're right.
Showing that, and this shows that how much forgetting one person can remove a lot of things, depending on the, what you did for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Him being called God Usopp under the sun, which I do feel like they're telling something about Sun God Nika and Usopp, which I don't think that Usopp is Sun God Nika, but I think that they're saying that the way Usopp lived, like I said, what if the actual author of the Sun God Nika stories might not be Sun God Nika, but someone like Usopp? Luffy might be Sun God Nika, but the person who told all those stories, which would explain why the stories of Sun God Nika for some people just are not possible, because they look crazy, almost told by a bona fide liar.
Yeah. I like that. So, I like that a lot. Yeah, because I think there's 3 Straw Hats that tie directly to Nika in some way, and I think it's Usopp, Luffy, obviously, and Brook. Because of Fishman Island and just how key music has been to Luffy's journey entirely. When it comes to Dressrosa, Usopp as well, like. Him getting the biggest bounty in the country, being referred to as God by his Jordan, who's now, in the current storyline, and we're getting to see him more and more. It makes so much sense for it to be a giant that gives him that epitaph, right? Because of his he's been intrinsically tied to the giants this whole time. So I really love that that's who did it, right? That's the one that was like, this is it. This is God Usopp.
Yeah, and I won't lie to you. His natural ability to rally people, like Mihawk said about Luffy and Marineford, you could say that Buggy has it and Usopp has it as well.
Yeah.
I still believe that there's more to it now that we know that Harden's knowledge of the Sun God stories before that, because of his connection to Saul now. I'm wondering why he did that. Like, does he know something? Like, he wanted to make it happen? Like you said, Usopp being the person that was treated. If you think about it, there's an actual similar parallel with the Return of Sabo, where I always say that if there's someone who's like, Luffy has a really true like best friend, they're all best friends of Luffy in the crew, but the true best friend is the one that's shenanigan is Usopp.
Yeah.
When the hole is done created by the Flame Emperor, what happens? The sun hits Usopp, who becomes God Usopp, who frees the slaves. Yeah. So I do feel like Oda is trying to tell a story of, it's not about one person, it's about a group of people. Just like Odin said, the Joy Boy and a group of people are gonna roar through the new world, and they'll be the one to defeat Kaido.
Yeah, and it almost harkens to the fact that all of the Straw Hats will have some kind of god moniker to them, right? Because we have God Usopp, we have the sun god Nika, we have the king of hell, Zoro, right? Which he could be a god of death or something like that. And then Robin, who mirrors the Hindu religion with Krishna and stuff, and having multiple arms, but then also having her demon form, which demons are also associated with gods. You know, it's very interesting.
There's also like a sun-like connection with her being the light of revolution.
Yeah, the light of revolution. Yeah.
The fact that Sanji's latest powerful move is called Ifrit, which is basically, you know, not a yokai, but like a demon-like fire entity, you know.
Yeah, it's
like you do have those themes in this group. It's true.
Oh yeah, I just had a thought too. All of the Straw Hats, right? Sanji, Robin, Zoro, they're all like, I'll become a demon for Luffy. Chopper, I'll become a monster for Luffy. Usopp said, I'm gonna become a god for Luffy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true though. Like, it's in a weird way true. Obviously, he didn't set out to become a god, but he did. He became a god for Luffy, which is crazy to me.
And if it wasn't for Usopp's actions, people forget. Okay, after what Usopp did, there was a bounty on him and everyone else.
Yeah.
The only reason why they were able to go to defeat the Flamingo's crew was because the ones who wouldn't follow the Flamingo were the ones who felt indebted to, not to Luffy, not to Sanji, not to Zoro, but to Usopp.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, this brings us to one of the latest big arcs for Usopp. He didn't have much to do in Egghead, you know, because they focused on some of the other Straw Hats, and obviously a lot of stuff went down in Egghead. So we're moving on to Wano, and I actually am gonna let you spit on this just like I did with Thriller Bark, because in Wano you put down his perseverance, and I would love to know why you put that down.
So it was mostly because of his fight with Ulti in page 1. Where first of all, you know that Usopp has this thought of never making fun of someone's dream, and then when they were building Luffy's dream, and they were forcing Nami to say what they want to say, he cared so much for Nami that he was not going to judge her. He even said it, just lie.
If you need to lie, lie. Yeah. Just say it.
If that's something, but no, he didn't. He kept going on and took crazy amount of damage. And if you think about it, you have him and Nami doing the stuff with Otama, you know, being with the child, like, you know, protecting the future. But my moment, I think, with other perseverance is this shows like just an added on what he's willing to take. Yeah. And he will not back down.
Exactly.
But the other point, that's for the perseverance. But there's another point, and I didn't want to bring it because I want to surprise you with it. And it's a build-up from Daddy Masterson, right? The whole thing that happened with Daddy Masterson, the lockdown, because of Yasopp, when he realized connection to Yasopp. And there's a moment that no one catches on is Izo looks at Usopp and says, God Usopp, go forward. I will back you.
Yeah.
And people don't realize Izo was a marksman of the Whitebeard Pirates.
Yes,
but other crew gets along well with the Whitebeard Pirates, the Red Hair Pirates.
The Red Hair Pirates.
I'm convinced the reason why Izo helped out, backed up Usopp wasn't because he's God Usopp. He is Ace's younger brother, his crew member.
Yeah.
It's because I think he knows who Yasopp is, just like Ivankov with Luffy, and that's why Ivankov backed him in Marineford. I think same thing as Izo. Izo backed up in Wano because he knows who the type of person Yasopp is, and he knew that his kid is at least 80% the type of marksman that he is.
Yeah.
I think it has nothing to do about Usopp, Luffy, or anything. It was about the father again.
I like that. See, I've never thought of it that way. That's actually a very interesting take on it. Because I always thought it was just him telling Usopp he believes in him as a marksman, if I'm being honest. But I like the idea it's because of the respect and admiration he already has for Yasopp. And being like, I don't have to worry about this guy because he's Yasopp's kid, kind of thing. I have to say though, like with the page 1 stuff, I always get upset with people who misinterpret that moment and they think that it's Usopp going against his morals and being just a skeevy weakling and stuff like that. That's not what he's doing. He's trying to protect his crewmate. He's trying to tell Nami, like, hey, it doesn't matter as long as, because Usopp's biggest thing is self-perseverance. You know, he wants to stay alive no matter what so that he can help Luffy achieve his dream, just like the rest of the Straw Hats want as well. So he's telling Nami in this moment, it's not that he's saying you should lie. He's telling her, if you need to lie, lie, because it's not worth losing your life. But I think in his heart, he knew she wasn't going to. And then with the stuff with Otama as well, it's people don't give Usopp the credit he deserves there. Otama's, what is it, Chibidongo? The things she does, that would not have worked as well if Usopp wasn't able to shoot as many of them into people's mouths, paws as he did. It's such a feat, man. He literally turned the tides of the battle. Him and Otama, a little girl and Usopp, were the ones who turned the tides of the battle that was going on inside of Onigashima because of what they did.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, like it's and another point that shows to it, which again I'm telling you his backstory is fake. It doesn't happen to him as a child. It's a recurring theme of him feeling to protect the kid. Because I believe no one was there to protect him.
Yeah. Him and Nami are both very much a protect the children kind. And that's actually something I'd seen with Robin here in these past 3 chapters in Elbaf, is how much she is with Bonnie, which she's always had an affinity for children, but her being with Bonnie, and I know we're not talking about Robin, but her being with Bonnie, it just goes to show she's treating Bonnie like she wished somebody had treated her as a child. I digress. Yeah. I think you're right though. It's Usopp. He wants to protect children. It's why he stayed with Nami and Otama. And I love them as a trio in Wano. Like, that was one of my favorite parts of Wano, is those 3 going around the castle, recruiting Kaido's own men against him. It's just so well done.
Yeah, I would say that the 3 crew members who have an affinity for kids is Nami, Robin, and Usopp. If you can think about it, Chopper is close to who? Nami, Robin. Usopp, and Robin.
Yeah, and Zoro.
You think about it, and Zoro. But if you think about it, there's something quite interesting. If you actually look at it, we know that Momo, when he was a child, his child state, he was obviously Zoro because of the connection to Wano, right?
Yeah.
The swordsman stuff. Chopper, the connection of them being the youngest. Okay. Luffy, as normal. Sanji and Brook being upset on the perviness. And Nami and Robin, right? Nami and Robin were just like older sisters for him. Usopp was the only one who, you know what I mean? He just went the flow with Momo. Never got upset on anything he did. There was no like hostility because Momo was just, being himself.
Yeah, he's just being a little kid.
Letting him be a kid. Like it's very telling. Like, when I was doing the research for this thing, I realized, oh my god, if I think about it, the reason why there's almost nothing between Momo and Usopp is because Usopp was basically not coddling him, was not attacking him because Brook and Sanji all the time getting upset about Momo. Not talking about the Wano stuff with Zoro. He was just letting him be a kid, and it's a recurring theme that no one realized that he also tries to protect the kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Every kid except the Seraphim's and that kid.
Yeah, of course. So, Kube, I have one last question for you before we wrap up for the night. I know you have a lot to say, so I'm going to ask that you limit yourself a little bit, but what are you personally expecting from Usopp in Elbaf?
So I believe, and I do hope it's in Elbaf when he achieves his dream. You and I have been talking that we wanted to be in Elbaf. And so everyone, I want you all to do a mental exercise where just close your eyes and listen to me. Imagine the scene in Elbaf will be the same introduction scene as Usopp in Seer Village, where Usopp stands tall with people behind him. But instead of saying, I'm Captain Usopp, he goes, I am God Usopp, a brave warrior of the sea. And that's what I want to see. The moment he achieves his dream, that's when he's willing to do it. And for people who are wondering why Elbaf, the connection of brave warrior of the sea happened in Little Garden. The wording never happened. That wording never appeared before Little Garden.
Yeah.
The live action changes that, but you know what I mean. It's a different universe for me. Love the live action, but it's a different universe than the manga.
It is, yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I did a whole rambling addiction about Elbaf predictions, and one of the biggest points that I kept mentioning is that Usopp will achieve his dream. So when you said that, I'm not gonna lie, I got a little bit of chills, my man. That's exactly what I want. I want God Usopp to stand up and say he's a brave warrior of the sea. Because Usopp thinking he's the weakest member and then being the first member to achieve their dream thanks to Luffy and the journey that he's brought him on, that will give him the boost he needs to participate in the final war without that fear. Well, obviously he will still be afraid because that's part of Usopp's character, but you know what I mean. He'll have the confidence that he needs to go into that battle.
And I think that's when he'll meet Usopp afterwards. Once he's
I think so as well. I think so as well. Yeah. That once he's been a brave warrior of the seas, when he'll meet Usopp. All right, Kube. I want to thank you for joining me today for Rambling Addiction.
I want to thank you for being able for me to, in a private setting where I can spit about Usopp without any interruption, without anyone getting triggered by anything. As you know, Usopp is like, Sanji and Usopp are one of those two Straw Hats. There are some others as well, but you know, specifically with some of the stuff that happened in the past in their arcs, where you know they get slandered a lot. So I was happy to be able, you know, to spit about Usopp without having to defend against those unnecessary allegations.
And if you guys want to see more of Kube of the Red Sea, make sure you go to the Eternal Dawn, where you can subscribe. We do weekly streams over there together. We do chapter discussions. We do all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you're over there and you subscribe. In closing, I think that Usopp is one of the most integral parts of the story. When you have a character like Usopp, who the audience can relate to, who can see themselves in, this is someone who, if you were thrown into this world, this would be you. And a lot of people don't like to think that, right? They like to think that they would be a Zoro type, or a Sanji type, or a Brook or Jinbei type, someone who can fight and hold their own. But that is not the case. Most of us, if thrust into the world of One Piece, would be in the same boat as Usopp. But that is not a bad thing, because through perseverance, and not only that, but sheer willpower, Usopp has proven himself time and time again, not only to be one of the most integral members of the Straw Hat crew, but a brave warrior of the sea. Because I, for one, as I said in my Elbaf prediction videos, as Kube has said, as our doctor, lovable Smokey Chopper, Grand Line Bound has said, Usopp has already achieved his dream. The one thing that's holding him back from accepting the fact that he is a brave warrior of the sea is something Kube and I had said throughout this whole video, and it's that belief in himself. All Usopp needs to achieve his dream is to believe that he himself is a brave warrior of the sea, and for his crew to see it in their eyes as well, which we think that they already do. So yes, I've been StrawHatLucas, Captain of the Eternal Dawn. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment your favorite Usopp moment down below, ring that bell icon, do all of that YouTube stuff, but more importantly than anything else in this entire world, I want all of you to have a wonderful, wonderful night.